Well, welcome to Lesson 2, Part 1. And in Part 1, we'll have a look at gender, plurals and duals. And we'll have a look at Hebrew adjectives. And in Part 2, we'll look at numbers, cardinals and ordinals, days of the week and months, and numeric values of letters. Now, the suggested exercises for Lesson 2 are in Biblical Hebrew and Introductory Grammar by Paige H. Kelly, Lesson 7, Lesson 8, and Lesson 13, and the exercises there. And if you've got Basics of Biblical Hebrew Grammar by Gary D. Practico and Miles V. Van Pelt, then have a look at Section 2, the Basics of Hebrew Nouns and Nominals, and do the lessons in Part 4, Hebrew Nouns, Part 7, Hebrew Adjectives, and Part 11, Hebrew Numbers. So without further ado, let's have a look at Lesson 2, Part 1. Slide 26, Lesson 2, Gender. In Hebrew, unlike English, words or things or nouns have gender, masculine or feminine. We don't have this in English, but in Hebrew, things like the earth, for example, that's actually a feminine word. The word for earth, or eretz, or aretz, is a feminine noun. It's the same for everything in Hebrew. Things can actually be masculine or feminine. A tree, a fish, a house, things that in English are just called it, in Hebrew are called he or she. Feminine nouns can be identified because they have a hey tacked on the end of them. At least some of them do anyway. There are some exceptions to this general rule, of course. Masculine nouns don't have a hey, generally. For example, the word for king, Malik, mem, lamed, and final kaf. King. So that's masculine. The feminine word for queen is derived from the masculine word, and it's called Malka, mem, lamed, kaf, hey, Malka, queen. Similarly, the word for prophet, Navi. And if we want to say prophetess, it's Naviya. Naviya. Prophetess. The word for youth, Na'ar. Na'ar. Nun ayin resh. If we want to say maiden, Na'ara. Nun ayin resh hey. It's just it's the word nar with a hey at the end. Na'ar with a hey at the end, becoming Na'ara. The word for horse, sus. We have a look at the female word, susa, meaning a mare. It's just the word sus with a hey at the end. So we can see the masculine word and the feminine word. And the only difference between them is that the feminine has a hey at the end. Now there are many other words, as I mentioned before, that don't have a hey at the end but are still feminine. For example, the word for earth. In the beginning, Yahweh created God, Elohim, created the heavens and the earth, Aretz. Well, the Aretz is feminine, but the heavens, Hashemayim, is a masculine word. Slide 27, Lesson 2, Nouns, Plurals. We'll see more examples of gender shortly, but another term that we need to discuss is something called plurals. In English, if we want to say more than one of something, we put an S at the end of the word. This is called a plural. For example, house, book, or law becomes houses, books, or laws. These are plurals. See, they have the S at the end. So plural is just a fancy way of saying more than one of something. And in English, we denote plural by putting an S on the end usually. In Hebrew, there are two letters that are added to the end of the word to signify a plural. And there are two types of plural endings, one called masculine and another called feminine. Masculine plural endings have the letters yod, mem at the end of them. This is a little cherik yod, which makes it an E sound. So this is im. So we add a im to the end of a word. Feminine plural endings have the letters ot added to the noun. So if we have a masculine word or noun, for example, a king, we want to say more than one king, we want to say kings, we put the im at the end. So king is Malak and kings is Malakim. If we wanted to say queens, queen, Melcha, if we want to say queens, we say Melchot. We put the ot at the end. So let's have a look at some examples. Slide 28, Lesson 2, Nouns, Plurals, Gender, Masculine. Remember that in slide 26 we said that in Hebrew words or nouns are either masculine or feminine, which is different to English. In English things are it, it's just a thing. But in Hebrew a thing is a male or a female thing. A house or a car or anything is masculine or feminine. And that changes the types of plural endings we put on the end. In English we just put an S on the end of anything, but in Hebrew we put an im or an ot at the end. So let's have a look at the masculine plural endings. Alright, first word is Seuss. Seuss, so it's a masculine singular noun, and that means horse. And the plural, Susim, horses, has the yod mem put at the end, so it becomes Samak Vav Samak Yod Mem. By the way, just to remind you, the Vav with the dot in it is being used as a vowel, so it's not a V sound, it's an U sound. So that says Susim, Susim, horses. Here's another masculine noun. These are all going to be masculine singular nouns. Shir, song, Shin Yod Resh. And the plural is shirim, songs. In the Song of Songs, in Hebrew it's called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, Shir Shirim, Song of Songs. Davar, dalet, bait or vait, resh. Word. In the beginning was the word. Bereshit haya hadavar. In the beginning was the word that created the universe. And the plural is davarim. Davarim. Dalet, vait or bait, resh, yod, mem. Words. Sefer. Samak, pay or fay, resh. Sefer. Book. Book. And if we want to say books, it's sefarim. So it's just sefer with the yod mem at the end of it. Similarly, Malak, which we spoke of in the previous slide, king. And if we want to say kings, we say Malachim. Mem, Lamed, Kaf, Yod, Mem. Malachim. Malachim. Ish, Aleph, Yod, Shin. That means man. Adam means man also. But another word for man is Ish. It's related to the word for fire, Ish. It has a Yod in it. If we want to say men, we say Anashim. So here we've actually changed the word. So it's not Ishim, it's Anashim. We have a nun added. There's a few words where we make some changes like this, but these are not as common. So this is Anashim, men. And see, in English, we don't always have an S to denote that it's more than one of. For example, we don't say mans for more than one man, we say men. So we don't put an S on it, we just change the A in man to an E sound. Am, or Am Israel, the people, Am. Amim, Amim, is plural, Ayin Mem Yod Mem. So it goes from Ayin Mem, that's a final Mem, to Ayin Mem, same letter but it's not final, Yod Mem, and that means peoples. And the word for statute is chuk. And if we want to say statutes, we go chukim. Statutes, chukim. Chet, kuf, yod, mem. Chukim. Ben. Ben means son. And if we want to say sons, we say banim. Banim. Notice the vowels change also when we put the yod at the end. We don't need to memorize all the rules for all of that, but just be aware that the vowel changes under these words when we add letters to the front or middle or end of them. So ben, son, becomes benim, sons. And cloud, anan, ayin nun, nun is the nun and then the final nun. It's at the end. Anan means cloud. And the plural is ananim, ananim. Ayin nun, nun, yod, mem. So those two nuns are just these two nuns, but because this is no longer at the end of the word, it changes from a final nun to a normal regular nun, and that means clouds. So these are all masculine nouns, and so they all have masculine plural endings on them. Slide 29, Lesson 2, nouns, plurals, gender, feminine. We've had a look at the masculine nouns in the previous slide. Now let's have a look at the feminine nouns. Again, feminine nouns have the letters vav, tav, ot. It's a vav with a holomit there above it, so it becomes a o sound. Feminine plural endings have the ot added to them. So let's have a look at some examples. Alright, if we again have a look at the word for horse, but the feminine singular version of it, so that's for a mare, a female horse. Horse is sus, and a female horse, mare, is susa. Susa. Samak vav, samak hay. Mare. And the plural is susot. Mares. Susot. Samak vav, tav. So the word, remember, for the masculine for horse is sus, and the plural for horses, male horses, was susim. And now the plural for female horse, susa, is susot, mares. So male horse is sus, and the masculine plural is susim, horses, male horses, and the word for female horse, mare, is susa, and for mares, susot. Let's have a look at another one. Torah is one that we should all be pretty familiar with. Torah. Tav, vav, resh, hey means the law. Well, it means more than that. It means to fire an arrow or something going in the direction of. So the Torah is actually pointing the direction towards Yahweh, and in particular to his son, the Mashiach, Yeshua. And the plural of Torah is Torot. So Torah is actually a feminine noun, and its plural has a feminine plural ending, ot, at the end of it. So Torah becomes Torot, laws, or translated laws. Likewise, the word for commandment. We have someone who has had a bar mitzvah. They are a son of the commandment. Bar is another word for son, and mitzvah means commandment. Mitzvah, commandment, is a plural. Sorry, it's a feminine noun. And so the plural, mitzvot, is commandments. Mitzvot. So mitzvah becomes mitzvot. So here we have the vav being used both as a vowel and it's got the os sound, but it's actually being used as a consonant as well. So it's mitzvot, mitzvot. Another feminine singular. Now this one doesn't have a hey at the end, is ruach, spirit. Ruach, resh, vav, chet. Ruach, spirit. So this is, some feminine nouns have the heys, but some don't. But it still has the feminine plural ending of ot at the end of it when we say spirits or ruchot. Spirits, ruchot. The word for mother, em. Aleph mem, mother, em. And if I want to say mothers, I go amot, mothers. Bat, which means daughter, and it's related to the word for house, bait, or the letter bet, which I often say bait. My apologies. Bat, and the daughter, and the plural, banot. Now here, it's not batot, it changes to banot, banot, daughters. So there's a few words like this, and you just have to learn them, or just recognize them when you come across them. Banot, daughters. Nefesh, nefesh means soul. Nun, pei, or fei, shin. Soul. Sometimes translated life. The life of the soul is in the blood. The life, the soul, the high of the nefesh is in the blood, dam, nefesh, soul. That's why we should never drink blood, or should always have when we eat meat, it should always be well drained of the blood. Nefeshot, nefeshot. Souls. Eretz is one we mentioned before, which means land, Eretz. It also means the earth. And the plural is Aretzot, Aretzot. Lands, or earths. Father, Av. There's the Aleph Beit. The Aleph Beit is the father. And the plural is Avot, Avot, fathers. And last but not leastly, Chalom, which means to dream, dream. Chalom, Chet, Lamed, Vav, Mim. Vav again is being used as a vowel. Chalom, Vav. Off sound, Chalom. And the plural, Chalomot, dreams. Chalomot. So that's all for the feminine plural nouns. So the feminine plural nouns have an ot at the end, whereas the masculine nouns that we saw in the previous slide have an im at the end. Slide 30, Lesson 2, Summary of Noun Endings. So let's summarize what we have just seen regarding the noun endings. For singular nouns, the masculine singular does not have a letter added to it. It is just left as it is. For example, davar, it doesn't have any fancy letters at the end. So in many cases, a word just as that, just the three-letter root without any letters added to it, it's a masculine noun. And davar in this case means word. Feminine singular nouns can actually have a hey on the end of them, but sometimes they don't, like the masculine nouns, and it's just a matter of learning them. You actually have to learn them, or at least recognize them when you see them. If it's got a hey at the end, it's often a feminine singular noun. Sometimes the singular nouns can have a tav at the end. I haven't shown you any examples of that, but they can have a tav at the end. So the feminine singular word here, Torah, means law. It's a feminine. It's got the hey at the end. And the plurals, masculine plurals, end with a im, herik yod mem, an im. So davar becomes devarim, word becomes words. And the feminine plurals end with ot, vav, holom vav, and a tav, ot. So Torah becomes Torot, law becomes laws. Now there are some exceptions to these rules. For instance, the masculine singular word for father, av, actually has a feminine plural ending, avot. So it's not avim, it's for fathers, it's avot. It's got a feminine plural ending, which is a little bit confusing. But you soon become aware of the exceptions, the common ones anyway, just by reading them. You often come across the word for fathers. The fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Also, many feminine singular words do not have a hey at the end of them. So many do, but many don't. This one, aretz, doesn't have a hey at the end of it, but its plural is still a feminine plural, aretzot. And you don't necessarily have to learn all of these when you're just passively reading the word, but you do the Torah. But you do need to be aware that that masculine plurals have an im at the end of it, and feminine plurals have an ot at the end of it, and that feminine plurals often end singular words often have a hey at the end, whereas masculine singular words don't, but sometimes the feminine words don't also. Slide 31, lesson 2, dual nouns. Duals mean a pair of something. We have looked at singular and plural nouns, that is, things or people denoting one or many. We've looked at the ems and the ots, the masculine and plural nouns. Now we're going to look at a very similar plural type of thing, but it's called a dual. And it doesn't mean one or more, it means two, a pair of something. So this third type of noun ending is called a dual, meaning a pair. A dual looks pretty similar to a masculine plural, which ends in im, but the vowel sound is a little different. It has a aim sound to it. So it's not an im, it's an aim. It's the same yod and mem, but it's got a different vowel there. For example, yad, hand, becomes yadaim, a pair of hands. If I wanted to say hands, I'd say yadim. Same same letters, but it wouldn't have the sound there. So it wouldn't be yadaim, it would be yadim. Ozen, which means ear, plural, the dual, ozenaim, a pair of ears, ozenaim. Ayin means eye, ayin, becomes ayanaim, 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 a pair of eyes. Regel, which means foot, becomes raglaim, raglaim, a pair of feet. Kanaf, which means wing, becomes kanafaim, kanafaim, a pair of wings. Safa, which means lip, but notice it's a feminine noun. It's got the hey at the end. It's going to change the plural ending slightly. You don't have to memorize all this, you just have to be aware of it. Safa time. So safa, which means lip, becomes safa time, lips, a pair of lips. So if we, so this has the same spelling as the masculine plural, but it has an im instead of an im at the end of it. So just a slightly different vowel sound, but the same consonants in the plural. So yeah, so there's just if it's got a hey at the end, we can have a tav there. So that's just something to be aware of. So that's duals, a pair of something. Slide 32, Lesson 2, Adjectives, or describing words. An adjective is a describing word. It is used to describe or limit a noun. For example, big house. Here the word big is an adjective. It's describing the house, and house is the noun. House is the thing. Strong man. Man is the noun, the thing, and strong is the adjective. He's not a weak man, he's not a red man or a blue man, he's a strong man. And strong men often marry beautiful women. And so the word beautiful is limiting the word woman. This could refer to all women, but this is referring to beautiful women. Of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And here is another adjective, many people. Many, and people is the noun. Well, it's the same in Hebrew, but in Hebrew the adjective comes after the word. So here we have the word for a man, ish, and he's a good man, ish tov. Tov means good. A good man, ish tov. And in the plural, if we want to say men, anashim, and we want to say good men, we put the word tov at the end, but we put the same plural ending at the end. So it becomes anashim tovim. So we don't do this in English, but we do this in Hebrew. So that means good men. But you could translate it literally as men, goods. But as I said, it's not quite the same in English. Isha tova. Isha means a woman, and tov means good. And it's agreeing in the gender here. So it's not tov, it's tova, a good woman, or a woman good. Literally a woman good, but we say in English a good woman. And the plural is nashim tovot. There are some words that have that are singular feminine nouns, but they have a masculine ending at the end. So this is a good woman. This is a regular plural, so it's got a masculine ending here. But we could use a different example. For example, I could say ruach tova, and that would be a good spirit, and that would be ruchot tovot. Or I could say souls, good souls, and that would be nefesh tova, and that would be, and the plural would be nefeshot tovot. But here we have an example of a irregular plural, which has it's a feminine singular with a masculine-looking plural at the end, and it becomes a plural. Malik Gadol, a king, good, a good king, or great, sorry, not good, great, Gadol, becomes Malachim Gedolim, great kings, Malachim Gedolim. So we can see that the plural agrees with, sorry, not the plural, the adjective, the adjective has the same plural ending as the noun. Ir Gedolah. The ir is a feminine singular, but it doesn't have the hay on it, but it's still a feminine singular noun. Ir, so the word Gedol, which means great, is changed to Gedolah because it's a feminine noun. So it's Ir Gadol, not Ir Gadol. A great city. And that becomes Gedolot, Irim Gedolot. Again, this is an irregular plural here. Notice that the adjective has the same plural and gender as the noun it is describing. So we have the same gender here, same gender here, same gender here. And we would have the same gender here, but this just happens to be one of those strange exceptions. Same gender here, same gender here. And we would have the same gender here, but there's just an exception. Adjectives also agree in definiteness, which is just a fancy grammatical term for the word the. We put a hey in front of something. We make it definite. Instead of just being a city, it becomes the city. By putting a hey in front, we say the in Hebrew. So ha'ir, the city. And if we want to put an adjective on the end, we put the hey in front of the adjective as well. The city, the great, if you like. The great city. And the plural is the same. If we want to say the cities, ha'arim, then if we want to say great, the great cities, we have to put the hey in front of great as well. Hagadolot, the great cities. So the main thing from this page is just to know, this slide is to know that when we have an adjective at the end of a word, it agrees in the gender, whether it's singular or plural, except for these irregular exceptions. And it also agrees if we put the in front of something. So this is a, and this is the. So if the noun has a hey in it, meaning the adjective also has a hey. So that's adjectives describing words. That's how we put them together with the nouns in Hebrew. Well done, you've survived. And I think it's time for a cool break. And after you've recuperated, we'll have a look at lesson 2. And we'll look at numbers, masculine and feminine, cardinal numbers, ordinals, that's numbers like first, second, third, etc. And we'll look at days of the week and months and numeric values of letters. Well, a warm welcome to lesson 2, part 2. And in part 1, we had a look at gender, plurals, duals, and adjectives. And in part 2, we'll have a look at numbers, cardinals and ordinals, days of the week and months, numeric values of letters. The suggested exercises for lesson 2, Biblical Hebrew and Introductory Grammar by Paige H. Kelly, lesson 7, lesson 8, and lesson 13, and the exercises in them. And in Basics of Biblical Hebrew Grammar by Gary D. Practico and Miles V. Van Pelt, section 2, the basics of Hebrew nouns and nominals. Part 4, Hebrew nouns, 7, Hebrew adjectives, and part 11, Hebrew numbers, and the exercises in them. Okay, let's have a look at lesson 2, part 2. Slide 36, lesson 2, numbers, cardinals, and ordinals. Numbers, like everything else in Hebrew, occur as masculine and feminine. Let's look at the cardinal numbers first. That's numbers 1, 2, 3, etc. We have masculine and feminine versions of these numbers. the masculine first. The number 1 is called Echad. Echad. Aleph, Chet, Dalet. Echad. The number 2 in Hebrew is called Shnaim. Shnaim. Shin, Nun, Yod, Mem. Shnaim. The number 3 is called Shalosha. Shalosha. Shin, Lamed, Shin, Hey. Shalosha. The number 4 is called Arba. Arba. Aleph, Resh, Beit, or Bet, Ayin, Hey. Arba. 4. 5 is called Chamisha. Chamisha. Chet, Mem, Shin, Hey. Chet, Mem, Shin, Hey. Chamisha. 6 is called Shisha. Shisha. Shin, Shin, Hey. 7 is called Shiva. Shiva. Shin, Beit, or Bet, Ayin, Hey. Shiva. Number 8 in Hebrew is called Shmona. Shmona. Shin, Mem, Nun, Hey. Shin, Mem, Nun, Hey. Shmona. Number 9 is called Tesha. Tesha. Tav, Shin, Ayin, Hey. Tesha. And finally, the number 10 is called Asara. Asara. Ayin, Sin, Resh, Hey. Asara. Ayin, Sin, Resh, Hey. The feminine numbers are more or less the same, but they lack the Hey at the end of the word in most cases. And instead of Echad for 1, we have Echat with a Tav at the end instead of a Dalet. Achat. And instead of Shanaim for 2, we have Shataim. Shataim. And we have Shalosh for 3 instead of Shalosha. And for 4, we have Arba instead of Arba'ah. And for 5, we have Chamish instead of Chamisha. And for 6, Sheish instead of Shisha. And Shiva for 7 instead of Shiva. And Shmoneh instead of Shimona for 8. And for 9, Tesha instead of Tesha. And for 10, Esir instead of Asara. So these numbers are used, either the masculine or the feminine, are used to describe a noun. If the noun, the thing that it's numbering, is a masculine thing, then we use the masculine numbers. And if it's feminine, we use the feminine numbers. Of course, in English, we only have the numbers 1 to 10. We don't have a masculine or feminine. But other languages do have masculine and feminine. And of course, Hebrew is one such language. Now, as well as the cardinal numbers, we have the ordinals. That's first, second, third, etc. So these describe the order of things. Is it the first or is it the second, third, fourth, etc. First is Rishon. Rishon. The first day of the week is called Yom Rishon. We'll have a look at the days of the week shortly. And the word for second in Hebrew is Shani. By the way, for the word for first, Rishon, it reminds us of Bereshit, in the beginning. Rishon, first, or the head, or the beginning of things. Second, as I said, is Shani. Third is Shalishi. Fourth is Revi'i. Fifth is Chamishi. Sixth is Shishi. Seventh is Shavi'i. Eighth is Shemini. Ninth is Teshi'i. And 10th is Asiri. Now the feminine numbers, ordinal numbers, are very similar. We have for first Rishonah, for second Shanit, for third Shilashit, for fourth Riva'it, for fifth Chamishit, for sixth Shishit, for seventh Shavi'it, for eighth Sheminit, for ninth Teshi'it, and for 10th Asirit. And we'll have a look at these numbers as they're used for the days of the week and the names of the months. So that's it for numbers, cardinals and ordinals. Slide 37, Lesson 2, Numbers, Days of the Week. In the biblical week there are 7 days, just like in our calendar. The first day of the week is our Sunday, and the 7th day of the week is our Saturday. But a biblical day begins in the evening. In Genesis 1:5, we read there was evening and morning the first day, evening and morning the second day, and so on and so forth. The first day of the week in the Bible is called Yom Rishon. Yom Rishon. Remember from the ordinal numbers that Rishon means first. So this literally means Yom, which means day, Yod Vav Mem, Yom Rishon, day 1, day first. Not day 1, day first. Second day of the week is actually called Yom Shani, which actually just means day second. Yom Shani. And you guessed it, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th days of the week are called the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th days. Yom Shalishi, day 3rd, for what we would call our Tuesday, or part of our Tuesday. Yom Revi'i for 4th day. Yom Chamishi for 5th day. And Yom Shishi for 6th day. And finally, the 7th day can be called Yom Shavi'i, 7th day, but of course it's called in the Bible everywhere as the Shabbat, or Shabbat, which means to sit down or to rest. Now, the first day of the week, Yom Rishon, is mentioned as such in Leviticus 23, B'Yom HaRishon, on the first day. Now, interestingly, this is not what it is called the first day in Genesis 1:5. But there, although it's often translated in the King James as the first day, it literally says Yom Echad, which means day 1, Yom Echad. And the normal word for the first day of the week everywhere else in the Bible is Rishon, Yom Rishon, the first day. So saying Yom Echad is actually suggesting something, that it isn't actually the first day of creation, but a recreation, Yom Echad. So it's not first day, it's day one. But all the other days of the week in the Genesis account are second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, or Yom Shani, Yom Shalishi, Yom Revi'i, Yom Chamishi, and Yom Hashishi. It's in Genesis 1:8 and verse 13, 19, 23, and 31 after that. And finally the Shabbat. It's B'Yom HaShavi'i, on the seventh day, Genesis 2:2, Yahweh or God rested, Elohim rested, Shabbat. So here we have the 7 days of the week mentioned in the first chapter of the Bible, and the day of rest mentioned in the second chapter. So the days of the week are very important, and we find that Yahweh does a lot of things in groups of sevens. There are 7 churches, or kehilot, which are the 7 candles of the menorah, or 7-branch candlestick. There are the 7 feasts, and in Leviticus 23 the feasts are introduced first of all with a mention of the 6 days of creation and Yahweh resting on the Shabbat. So we find in Scripture that there is a link when things of a similar number are mentioned: 7 feasts, 7 churches, 7 candlesticks, 7 days of creation, and so forth. So one thing can tell us a lot about the other. There are 7 voices, there are 7 spirits, which are the 7 angels of the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. So numbers tell us a lot, and these numbers of the week are very important because they're mentioned in the first chapter of the Word of God, in Genesis chapter 1, or Bereshit. So that's all for numbers, days of the week. Slide 38, lesson 2, numbers, cardinals 11 to 19. And of course we're not talking about representatives of the Catholic Church that vote for the Pope, not that sort of cardinal. It is a normal number as opposed to an ordinal, which just means first, second, third, and so forth. So just as in English we have 11 to 19, we have a very similar system in the Hebrew, but of course we have masculine and feminine versions of these numbers. And numbers like this are very important because there are many lists of people and battles and numbers of cities taken and people that live in them, or that are killed with the sword, or that are numbers of people that are counted for various reasons. So numbers are very important, and they are written down in the Hebrew using the words that we've already looked at. But when we get to 11 to 19, we simply add the word 10 to the word for 1, for example, and we make the word 11. So Echad Eser is 11. And there's a slightly different form of it, Aste Eser, 11 also. And for 12 we have Shanaim Eser, and we also have Shnei Eser. For 13, Shlosha Eser, and Arba'a Eser for 14. Arba'a Eser. 15 is Chamisha Eser. And 16 is Shisha Eser. 17 is Shiv'a Eser. Shiv'a Eser. And 18 is Shmona Eser. Shmona Eser, 18. And 19 is Tesha Eser. Tesha Eser. The hay, when it's added at the end, tends to lengthen it, so perhaps it's Tesha Eser. So that's the masculine versions of the numbers. So it's just like our English counting system. We would say 19. See, 9 and 10. 19. 9, 10. And here they have Tesha Eser. 9 and 10. 19. And we would say 18. 8 and 10. Shmona Eser. 8, 10, 18. And 17, and so forth, all the way back up to 11. The feminine numbers are the same sort of deal, just with the hay at the end. So we have Echad Esrei, or Estei Esrei, and for 12, Shetayim Esrei, or Shtei Esrei for 12. Shalosh Esrei for 13. Arba Esrei 14. Chamish Esrei 15. Shish Esrei 16. Shiva Esrei 17. Shmonei Esrei 18. And Tesha Esrei for 19. And of course, the reason we have the two different sorts of numbers, masculine and feminine, is because we may be counting things that are either male or female. Remember that things in Hebrew can be male and female. Door, house, car in modern Hebrew. You know, everything is male and female. Yahweh makes everything male and female. He made Adam and he made Eve. So everything is masculine and feminine. And that's part of the image of God. Male and female is the image of God. And we see this in every part of creation. And you see masculine and feminine in nature, even to the point of atoms, that they have electrons, which are negative, and they have protons, which are positive. We could just relabel that masculine and feminine. And we have neutrons, and you might say, aha, well, here's something that's either neither male nor female. Well, you'll find that within a neutron there's the masculine and feminine all in one, just like Adam, in a sense, had Eve in him, and she was taken from his side. And so even science shows the masculine and feminine in nature, which is Yahweh's creation. So that's it for the cardinal numbers from 11 to 19. And they're used in many, many lists in the Tanakh, or Old Testament. Slide 39, Lesson 2, Numbers, Months. There will be some people that are familiar with the Hebrew calendar, having seen it elsewhere. The modern Hebrew calendar calls the months by the Babylonian names listed here, and some of those are mentioned in the Tanakh, or Old Testament, in the books of Esther and Nehemiah and Zechariah and so forth, after the Babylonian, or during the Babylonian exile. But in the Torah, the first 5 books, and elsewhere, they are referred to simply by a different name: the first month, second month, third month, and so forth. So the name for the first month is HaChodesh HaRishon, the month, the first, or the month first. Chodesh means month, Chodesh, and it's related to the word Chadash, which means new, because the month renews itself like the moon every month. We have a new moon, we have a new month Indeed, in English, the word for moon and month are related. So, a new moon and new month, and a new covenant. Some people call it a renewed covenant. Well, in a sense, but it's a new covenant in that it has different promises. The old had a curse over it. The new is doesn't have such a curse, but has unconditional promises. So the first month is called HaChodesh, the month, HaRishon, the first. Just like the first day of the week, Yom Rishon. And the Babylonian name is Nisan. So this is the month that we have Passover, or Pesach, and the other two feasts, unleavened bread and first fruits, which are all a picture of Yeshua and his death, burial, and resurrection as the first fruits from the dead. So the first month is really about the first coming of the Mashiach, among other things. The second month is called HaChodesh HaSheni, or the month, the second month, HaChodesh HaSheni. And the Babylonian name is Ayar, or Ayir. The third month is HaChodesh HaShalishi, the month, the third. HaChodesh HaShalishi, the third month. And the Babylonian name is Sivan. And it's during Sivan that we have the feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, 50 days or 7 weeks after the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So this is in the third month in Sivan, and the religious Jewish religious calendar fixes that day on the 6th of Sivan, but the Feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot, has to occur on the first day of the week, because it's after the Shabbat, 49 days plus 1, or 50 days after the Shabbat in the first month of during the Feast of Passover. So it can't actually happen always on the 6th of Sivan, but the religious calendar, Jewish religious calendar, has fixed it to the 6th of Sivan, which is just a bit of a workaround since they were not in the land. So they've been as faithful as they could, perhaps, to the calendar, certainly more faithful than the church has the last 2,000 years. But the substance of all this is Yeshua HaMashiach himself. The fourth month is called HaChodesh HaRevi'i, HaChodesh HaRevi'i, or the fourth month. And the Babylonian name for this is Tammuz. And this is a month where they would weep for Tammuz, which is a picture really of the Antichrist, or the Babylonian, I don't know, sun god, deity. It's a really wicked thing to do that. And this is, I think this is the period of Lent, may be mistaken. But see, the church, unfortunately, in ditching the biblical feasts and the biblical Hebrew calendar, has added a whole lot of paganized feasts, and like Easter, which is Ishtar, the goddess of fertility. And I'm not saying remembering Yeshua's death, burial, and resurrection is a bad thing. No, I think that's a good thing. But we should do it on the biblical feast days, on Pesach or Passover, and the feasts of the Torah are actually all about Yeshua. So why did the church get rid of these? Not good. Anyway, let us continue. The fifth day of the month, HaChodesh HaChamishi. HaChodesh HaChamishi. The fifth, literally, but the fifth month. HaChodesh HaChamishi. And this is called the month of Av. We know that Av means father, among other things. And it's during the month of Av where we have the destruction of the temple on the Tish B'Av is the 9th of Av, and both temples were destroyed apparently on that day. That's the month of Av. The 6th month is HaChodesh HaShishi, HaChodesh HaShishi, or Elul. And during Elul, this is the lead up, is 40 days of mourning or repentance or fasting, partial fasting, leading up to Tishri, which is the month of Yom Kippur, and what the Jews call the first of the month, or first of the year, or Rosh Hashanah. It is actually Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets. So the first of the month of Tishri is the Feast of Trumpets. HaChodesh HaShavi'i, the 7th month. So the big feast months in the biblical calendar in Leviticus 23 are the first month, where we have the 3 feasts, Passover, and unleavened bread and first fruits. And then 50 days later, in the 3rd month, we have one feast, that is Pentecost, or Shavuot, which is that when the law came down on Mount Sinai, and also when the tongues of fire came down on the disciples in the book of Acts, chapter 2, which is the law coming down through the Holy Ghost, if you like, and the beginning of Yahweh's work in earnest amongst the Gentiles through faith in the Messiah, Yeshua. Okay, so back down to the 7th month, this is the other big month, and that has the last 3 feasts, which are the Feast of Trumpets, which is called Yom Teruah, but the religious Jews call it Rosh Hashanah, which is very confusing. I don't want to get into that too much, but Rosh Hashanah means the first of the year. But it's the 7th month. But the 7th month is all about the return of Yeshua to his temple and the day of judgment, which we see mentioned in the book of Revelation. In any case, it's called HaChodesh HaShavi'i, and in Hebrew, the Babylonian term is Tishrei. And there is a hint of that being the first in that word Tishrei also. So there's a strange type between the 7th and 1st months, because the 1st month is really all about, and the feast associated with it is really about Yeshua's first coming, and the 7th month is really about his second coming suddenly to his temple for judgment. And we have the other 2 feasts as well. Not only do we have the Feast of Trumpets, but we have the Feast of Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, and we have Sukkot, or Tabernacles. The 8th month is HaChodesh HaShemini, or the Babylonian term Cheshvan. The 9th month is Kislev in the Babylonian, and in the Hebrew, it's the 9th month, or HaChodesh HaTishi'i. And during Kislev, we had that's when the Maccabees fought the Greeks and re-inaugurated the temple. The temple service restarted that, and there's the story of the lighting of the menorah and many other things in the book of Maccabees. An extra biblical book, but still historical let's go on to the 10th month. HaChodesh HaAsiri, HaChodesh HaAsiri, 10th month, or Tevat, in the Babylonian calendar. We have that mentioned in Esther. And the 11th month, HaChodesh HaEstayesa, or Shivat. And the 12th month, HaChodesh HaShanim Eser, or Adar. And now, it's not actually mentioned as such, but there is a leap month because it's a solar corrected lunar calendar. That means every so many years there has to be an extra month added. And this happens naturally if we follow the Bali Aviv cycle and we actually measure the first of Nisan by when the barley is green, or Aviv, in the land of Israel. And this is a way of solar correcting the lunar calendar. And if that's a little bit over your head, I won't get into all of that now, but Yahweh has a wonderful natural system for keeping in check with the times and seasons. Now Yahweh states in Genesis that He's made the sun, moon, and stars for times and seasons and so forth. And those seasons are related to the first and second coming of the Messiah and many other events. So we need to be familiar with the Hebrew calendar and understand the times that we're living in. And so we need to know where we are in time with regards to the Hebrew calendar. So the 13th month is just the HaChodesh HaShalisha Eser, the 13th month. And that's just called Adar Bet, or the Adar 2. So those are the Hebrew months and the Babylonian terms that came into use after the Babylonian exile. Slide 40, Lesson 2, Numbers, Cardinals 20 to 99. The Hebrew word for 20 is simply the plural of the word for 10. Now, the word for 10 is Eser, and the word for 20 is Esrim, Esrim. So here we have the singular form, which means 10, Eser, and the plural, Esrim, means 20. And likewise, or in a similar way, the words for 30, 40, 50, etc., all the way to 90, are simply the plural forms of 3, 4, 5, etc., all the way to 9. So for 30, we just add a im, and we get we add im to shlosh, and we get shloshim, 30. And for 40, we just take arba, and which means 4, and we add a im to it, a plural. We make it a plural, and it becomes 40. And chamesh, which means 5, we add a im to it, it becomes 50. And for 60, we take shish, and we put an im in, and it becomes shishim, 60. And 70, shiva, and we add an im to it, and it becomes shivaim, 70. And for 80, we take shmoneh, which is 8, and we put an im, and it becomes shmonim, 80. And tesha, 9, we add an im to it, it becomes 90, teshim. So these are all the same. This one, esrim, is just a doubling of the word for 10. And these ones are just the plural of the word for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, becoming 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So that's how we get these numbers here in Hebrew. We just take the simple cardinal number and we add a plural to it, masculine plural to it. Now, to say 21 or 22 or 23 or 33 or 43 or 44 or 45, we just say, for example, for 21, we just say 20 and 1, and or 20 and 2 for 22, and so forth. So, for example, Isrim ve'echad, Isrim, or Isrim ve'echat. We can have Isrim ve'echad or Isrim ve'echat, and they both mean 20 and 1, 21. Another example, Isrim ve'shanayim. Isrim means 20, and Shanayim means 2, and the vav here means and. So Isrim ve'shanayim, Isrim and Shanayim, or 20 and 2, 22. Another example, Arba'im, Arba'im, Ushmonei, Ushmonei, Arba'im, Ushmonei. Now the U and the V, they both mean the same thing. It means and. It's just sometimes we change the V sound to a U sound, depending on what word it's in front or what various other things. So Arba'im is 40. Here we have it here, Arba'im. And Shmonei is 8. So we get 48. Literally 40 and 8. And we see that in Joshua 21:41, if you want to look that up, just as an example. So that's how we add, that's how we count from 20 to 99 virtually. We simply add an im to the end to make it 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. And if we want to say 21 or 22, we just say the plural name for 20 or 30, and we say and 1 or and 2 or and 3, etc. So that's the cardinal numbers from 20 to 99. Slide 41, Lesson 2, Numbers, Cardinals, Hundreds and Thousands. Okay, first we'll look at the hundreds. And the word for hundred is mia in Hebrew. Mia, mim, aleph, hey. Mia. The word for 200 is simply the dual. We looked at duals in the earlier on the first half of the lesson, and it means a dual is a pair, and it just adds the ayim at the end of whatever it's a pair of. This is a pair of hundreds. So a pair of hundreds is 200. Ma'atayim. So mia is 100 and ma'atayim is 200. And 300 is just the word for 3 plus the word for 100. Me'at, sort of a plural ending to the feminine noun 100, or feminine looking noun. So we have shalosh me'at for 300, 300. And the same for the other numbers all the way to 900. Arba'a me'at, chamesh me'at, shesh me'at, sheva me'at, shmonei me'at, and tesha me'at. Now I've just said here this is the feminine construct. That's just this thing here. It's called a construct because it's just the feminine number, but it's got a slightly different vowel pointing used to construct other words. So it's a feminine construct plus the feminine plural, me'at. And for the thousands, we have Aleph. That's the first letter of the alphabet, Aleph. And Aleph means ox or leader, showing us that leadership is a servant role. An ox is a servant and quite a gentle creature considering its size. An ox has horns. You don't want to mess with them too much, but considering their size, they're lovely and gentle creatures. And the Aleph is the leader. We have to have someone that's gentle and kind as a leader. That's why we have the Lamb of God that is on the throne. You don't have a dragon on a throne. Dragons might be great for protecting the throne, if you like, because they're very cruel against the enemy. But we don't want a dragon on the throne. We want a gentle creature. Anyone can be a tyrant, and indeed tyrannical is related to the word for a dragon. Anyone can be tyrannical, Tyrannosaurus rex, tyrannical, but for a good king, we need someone that's patient and kind. And so we have the Aleph as the leader of the alphabet and of all creation. And the Aleph is Yeshua himself, the Aleph Tav. And by the way, Aleph has a numeric value of 1, and we will see that in the next slide. It's a numeric value of 1, it's the first letter. But it also here means 1,000, and that reminds us of the scripture that 1 day, or 1,000 years are as 1 day. So we have a mapping of the 7,000 years of this world, or this age, this evil age. We have 7,000 years mapping to the 7 days of creation, and each day is as 1,000 years. And we see this reflected in the name Aleph for 1,000, which also just happens to be the name of the first letter of the alphabet. It has a numeric value of 1. So we have this 1,000 relationship here. The word for 2,000 is simply the dual, or it just means a pair of alephs. So Alephim is, or Alpine is 2,000, or 2 1,000s, Alpine. And just as in the hundreds, we have a similar system where we have the Hebrew word for 3 plus the plural for 1,000. So we have 3,000, Shiloshet Alephim. And the same for 4,000, 5,000, all the way to 9,000. It's just the masculine construct. So here it was the feminine construct for the hundreds. Now it's the masculine construct. So we have this tav here. And I haven't given you a table of constructs because I want to just mention the main things without getting into too much detail. But you're certainly welcome to have a look at Hebrew grammar books to look into that further. So this is the masculine construct plus the masculine plural of Aleph, which is Alephim. So we have Shiloshet Alephim, Arba'at Alephim for 4,000, Chamishet Alephim for 5,000, Shishet Alephim for 6,000, Shivat Alephim for 7,000, Shmonat Alephim for 8,000, Teshat Alephim for 9,000. And we also have words for tens of thousands. 10,000 is called Revava, related to the word for many or great or multitude. Also related to the word rabbi, although Yeshua says, call no man rabbi, there's no one great but God. And there are different opinions on what that means, but I just take that on face value. I'd much rather be called a brother than rabbi. I'd rather be called someone low, then someone high. And if Yahweh wants to call me something high, then he can say, come up. And the word for 20,000 is the dual of Revavah, and that's Rabbatayim. And 30,000 Shalosh Rabbot, etc. So you see how it works very similarly to this. We have the same system for the 10,000s as well. So I won't list the entire thing, you get the picture. So that's cardinal numbers, hundreds, thousands, and even tens of thousands. Slide 42, Lesson 2, Hebrew Alphabet, Numeric Values. The letters from Aleph to Tet represent the numbers 1 to 9. Aleph equals 1, Bet equals 2, Gimel equals 3, Dalet equals 4, Hay equals 5, Vav equals 6, Zayin equals 7, Chet equals 8, Tet equals 9. Now the letters Yod to Tzadi represent the numbers 10 to 90. Yod equals 10, Kaf equals 20, Lamed equals 30, Mem equals 40, Nun equals 50, Samak equals 60, Ayin equals 70, Pei or Fei equals 80, Tzadi equals 90. The letters Kuf to Tav equal 100 to 400. Kuf equals 100, Resh equals 200, Shin equals 300, Tav equals 400. And then the 5 final forms. Kaf, final Kaf or Kaf Sofit. Here's the Kaf here. Here's the final form. Kaf Sofit equals 500. Final Mem equals 600. Final Nun equals 700. There's a Nun here. There's a Mem here. Final Nun equals 700. Pei or Fei, final Pei Sofit equals 800. And final Tzadi Sofit, is Tzadi here, equals 900. So letters are used for chapter and verse numbers, much like Roman numerals are in older English Bibles. For example, in Hebrew, if I want to say Genesis 1:5, I can write Bereshit, Aleph, Hay. Aleph equals 1, and the Hay equals 5. So I can say Genesis 1:5, Bereshit, Aleph, Hay. If I want to say Psalm 35:27, the word for Psalm is Tehillim, Psalms, Psalm, Tehillim. Psalm 35 is Lamed Hay. Lamed is 30 and Hay is 5. So we have 30 and 5. Lamed and Hay. Lamed Hay. And so it's chapter 35 and it's verse 27, or Kaf Zayin. Is Kaf 20 and Zayin 7. So we have 20 and 7. 27. Tehillim Lamed Hay Kaf Zayin. Psalm 35:27. Numeric values of words can be calculated also. And in the New Testament, we're told in Revelation, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So why is it called the number of a man, and it's the number of the beast also? Because both the man and the beast were created on the 6th day. Hence we have this trinity of sixes here, which has become synonymous with the trinity of evil, because this man is actually a beast, the Antichrist, if you like. So And of course, we have the book of Revelation in the Greek. We don't have it any longer in the Hebrew, which I believe it was written in for various reasons. Indeed, I believe the whole New Testament was written either in Hebrew or Aramaic or a combination of both of them, and it was translated into Greek. The church has been faithful to the name of Yeshua, and you could say that the leaders or the priests, if you want to call it that, have pointed the believers to Yeshua, just as Aaron pointed all the other candles towards the central candlestick, which is the Mashiach, and we read about that in Revelation also. But they have not been faithful in preserving the word in Hebrew, or preserving the feast days, or anything Torah related that the Jewish people would recognize. So we can see that the two houses of Israel have their strong and weak points. But it's my hope that we will one day have the New Testament in the original Hebrew at a time when people are ready to appreciate it, both Jews and those from the lost tribes and others also. So these are the numbers. Now, some people can be a little bit put off by anything to do with numerics because it can be used in the occult. And I would simply say that Yahweh speaks a lot about numbers, so numbers are important, and there's nothing wrong in the study of numbers or seeing deep things or hidden things in the Word regarding numbers. But I would advise, or I would ask, why do you seek to know deep and hidden things? Do you want to be like Balaam, who used his deep understanding to curse Israel? Do you want it for personal power? These are devilish and occultic reasons to know the deep and hidden things. The reason I want to know deep and hidden things is because I want to know the Word of God. I want to know Yeshua. I want to know the Messiah. And I want to please Yahweh. So I want to study His words. And numeric values of things can be helpful sometimes in understanding what Yahweh is talking about. And as I've described before, we often have things to do with numbers that describe similar or related things. For example, anything with 7, there's often a pattern in sevens. We have the 7 churches or the 7 candles and so forth. We might have the number 4 or 400 shekels or 400,000 men, or this is related to the land and the price for the ownership of the land. So we have many, 9 fruits of the Spirit. The numbers mean something, and a study of the numbers can help us to understand the Word of God. So it's not time wasted. Okay, well, hopefully you've just completed Lesson 2. And in Lesson 2, Part 1, we had a look at gender, plurals, duals, and adjectives. And in Part 2, numbers, cardinals and ordinals, days of the week and months, and numeric values of letters. Now, if you haven't done them already, then please have a look at the suggested exercises if you've got the following books: Biblical Hebrew and Introductory Grammar by Paige H. Kelly, Lessons 7, 8, and 13, and in Basics of Biblical Hebrew Grammar by Gary D. Practico and Miles V. Van Pelt, Section 2, the Basics of Hebrew Nouns and Nominals, Part 4, Hebrew Nouns, Part 7, Hebrew Adjectives, Part 11, Hebrew Numbers, and the exercises therein. So, well done.